Hello students, I am once again before you and today we will be discussing on a topic Raja Rao's Kanthapura, a post-colonial novel. Different critics, research scholars have also corroborated this proposition. We have earlier in our classroom lectures dealt in detail about Raja Rao, and you are well aware that Raja Rao is one of the most prominent Indian novelists writing in English. He has laid a strong foundation to Indian English novel together with Mulk Raj Anand and R.K. Narayan. Raja Rao in particular has been very instrumental in the development of Indian English novel. His novels are replete with Indian sensibility, characterized by his unique style and subject matter. His first and the best well-known novel, Kanthapura, is a remarkable expression of Indian sensibility. This novel is Indian both in theme and treatment. Acceptance of an Indian way of writing in English and Indianization of the novel as a form of literature is what makes Raja Rao post-colonial in style. Today's discussion attempts a post-colonial reading of Kanthapura, focusing on Raja Rao's style, characterized by Indian sensibility and Indianness. Now, we will try to understand what does the word post-colonial mean. Post-colonial, as is defined in literature, does not mean post-independence or after colonization, for this would be to falsely ascribe an end to the process. Post-colonialism rather begins from the very first moment, I repeat, the very first moment of the colonial contact. It is the discourse of oppositionality which colonization brings into being. Post-colonial literature often addresses the problems and consequences of the decolonization of a country especially questions relating to the political and cultural independence of formerly subjugated people, and themes such as racialism and colonialism. A range of literary theory has evolved around the subject. Now, talking about the characteristics of post-colonial literature, we find that post-colonial writers are really interested in nationhood and nationalism. A lot of these writers are very patriotic. They write books on behalf of their nations. Their work is often nationalist because post-colonial writers like to highlight and valorize their nation's cultural, political, and social identity. As a post-colonial text, Kanthapura focuses on the encounter of two cultures and shows how, while countering the imposing culture, the weaker one redefines and reinterprets its tradition while it seeks its identity. Raja Rao deconstructs the myth of the power of the foreign ruler, views resistance as an enabling strategy, and examines in detail the meaning and practice of ahimsa and satyagraha. Raja Rao's Indianization of the novel form and emphasis on the decolonization of English language can be interpreted from the post-colonial perspective. Raja Rao did not consider English language to be an alien language, but he claims that this language is the language of, quote, our intellectual makeup, like Sanskrit and Persian was before, but not of our emotional makeup. We cannot write like the English. We should not. We cannot write only as Indians either. We have grown to look at the large world as part of us. Our method of expression, therefore, has to be a dialect which some days proves to be a distinctive and colorful as the Irish or the American. The time alone will justify it. Unquote. Once asked about the distinctiveness of Indian language in an interview, Raja Rao answered, quote, I certainly feel that Indian English has acquired such distinction When I read some of the journals of India, I feel that they have overcome their Victorian English. They write good English, unquote. He further claimed, quote, I have written Puranas, but not novels, unquote. The statement expresses Raja Rao's style of writing novels characterized by Indian sensibility, by deviating from the conventional and British ways of writing novels. Raja Rao produced literature in an alien language, yet native in style. In Kanthapura, Raja Rao has experimented with the English language to evolve a suitable medium to express Indian sensibility. Raja Rao uses three techniques to infuse his novel with Indianness. Number one, literal translation of Indian idioms, phrases, proverb, etc. Number two, change in the syntax. And number three, Indian imagery. His most significant contribution is the evolving of an Indian English which is adequate enough to express Indian, even regional flavor without ceasing to be English. The language of Kanthapura is replete with Indian idiom, Indian imagery, and rural color. Raja Rao has used many Indian phrases and proverbs in the novel to give it a quintessential Indian flavor. For example, quote unquote, every squirrel has his day. The policemen are not your uncle's sons. If you are the sons of your father, we are the leakers of your feet. You cannot strengthen or straighten a dog's tail. With his week's earnings at his vests, etc. The influence of Rao's mother tongue can also be seen in Kanthapura. His description of the village is essentially Kannad. Quote, high on the ghats is it, high up the steep mountains that face the cool Arabian seas, up the Malabar coast is it, unquote. Quote, defend one's must against evil, unquote. Raja Rao's decolonization of English language gets an artistic manifestation in his use of Indian flavored abuses in the novel. Venkamma, a character in this novel, abuses her sister-in-law in a typical Indian style. Quote, if her parents are poor, let them set fire to their dhoti and sari and die. Oh, If only I could have had the courage to put lizard poison into their food. Unquote. Typical Indian abuses have also been used in the following statements. Quote, then there is such a battle of oaths, son of concubine, son of widow, you donkey's husband, oh you prostitute of a wind, she's showing her tricks again, stop you bitch, etc. However, Raja Rao in the foreword says that it is not easy to use English language to depict Indian sensibility. Quote, the telling has not been easy. One has to convey in a language that is not one's own the spirit that is one's own. One has to convey the various shades and omissions of a certain thought movement that looks maltreated in an alien language. I use the word alien, yet English is not only really an alien language to us, it is a language of our intellectual makeup, like Sanskrit and Persian was before, but not of our emotional makeup. We are instinctively bilingual. Many of us writing in our language and in English. We cannot write the English. We should not. Unquote. Raja Rao deviates in his approach to his subject matter from the Western novelist, so much so that David Machen, in his critique of the novel, asks, quote, is this a novel at all? All the central concerns of Western novel are absent. Social relations, psychological motivations, characterizations, judgment, a passion for character, unquote. The answer to this question is in Raja Rao's foreword to Kanthapura. Quote, we have neither punctuation nor the treacherous ets and ons to bother us. We tell one interminable tale. Episode follows episode. And when our thoughts stop, our breath stops, and we move to another thought. Unquote. The method of narration used by Raja Rao in Kanthapura is typically Indian. The story is told by an old woman Achakka who narrates the story for the benefit of a newcomer years later. Achakka's unlettered imagination provides Raja Rao the perfect opportunity to mingle God with men and to infuse his narrative with other worldliness. Raja Rao's use of myth in the novel also adds to the Indianness of the novel. In Kanthapura, he shows a remarkable parallelism between the Ramayana and the freedom struggle of India. He represents Swaraj as Sita, Mahatma as Rama, and Nehru as Bharata. He compares Rama's journey to Lanka to bring Sita to Gandhi's trip to England to participate in the second roundtable conference. Quote, they say the Mahatma will go to the red man's country and he will get us Swaraj. He will bring us Swaraj, the Mahatma, and we shall all be happy. And Rama will come back from exile, and Sita will be with him, for Ravana will be slain and Sita freed. He will come back with Sita on his right in the chariot of the air, and brother Bharata will go to meet them with the worshipped sandal of the master on his head. As they enter Ayodhya, there will be a rain of flowers. Raja Rao's use of language is dramatic and truly creative. To wrap up the discussion, many things need to be brought together. Raja Rao uses the language of the colonizer to portray Indian sensibility. He calls for the decolonization of English language, and he does not consider it to be an alien language. His way of writing in English language is different from the colonizers. Language becomes a medium for expressing the complexity and uniqueness of Indian lifestyle. Thus, Raja Rao, through Indianization of the novel, particularly the novel form, has used the English language, which succeeds in redefining and reinterpreting history and tradition. His way of writing novel is a typical Indian style, using literal translations of Indian phrases, idioms, juxtaposition of Indian freedom struggle with the Ramayana, his Puranic art of narration, his Indianness makes Kanthapura a post-colonial text. Thank you.